So we have now come to the end. This is the finale, the finito, the end, Gonzalez. What? Um, After looking at the last episode, I just have one thing to essentially clarify. Um, I am in no way, shape, or form uh, essentially wanting to hate this show. I never wanted that to be essentially an interpretation of it. For damn sure didn't want that. I didn't want this show to be bad. That I did not. I just knew it was going to be because of the writing on the walls, which I was right. So I don't even want to think that, I just immediately was like, no, it's Netflix and whatnot. And it's like, no, it's because of their track record that I understood that that was always a possibility. And essentially, that is exactly what happened. So, with that being the case, I want to hurry up and get through this because the more I get to put this show behind me, the better. I still feel, considering the positive feedback that comes from the show, that it is going to receive possibly a second season, but that's about it. And with that, they're going to rush as much as they can so they can do the Alabasta arc, because this was a very poorly written and poorly paced season that combined a plethora of different story elements all together without actually putting it together properly, and completely missing the character development that is done and was necessary within the show. There are overused and completely unnecessary scenes that are just an abundance throughout this entirety of the show. So I don't I don't see them doing anything dealing with Laboon correctly, Little Island, Drum Island, or Alabasta, where it would actually fit, especially considering how loose they were playing with the story in this adaptation, that they would actually do anything that would warrant, oh yeah, the second season is going to do really good. No, there were way too many elements that were done and essentially garnished throughout this entire series, where they came from westernized storytelling. And because of that, it ultimately ruined the core aspects of One Piece that make it unique, even among shonen, and manga and anime and whatnot. So, with that failure to uphold the general charm that One Piece had, I I know that this is not good. And if you're someone who, if you're, God willing, you're listening to this and you are on the fence about One Piece, or you haven't gotten sat down and actually listened, watched it or anything like that, first and foremost, go watch it. It's a really good anime. Don't let anyone deter you from looking at it. If you believe the length is something that will, stop you from looking at it, then again, also, what are you afraid of? Seriously, the length of a show. Okay, if the show actually turns out to be something you don't like, then you don't have to watch it. It generally is something that upon watching it, you will enjoy it. So it makes no sense. Like, I've heard people, basically dissuade themselves from even trying to get into it. People who essentially don't mind looking at anime and manga when it's held as the biggest one in the world. Not just in Japan or in America, in the world. It's the biggest anime in the world. And your reasoning or your logic behind not looking at it stems from the fact that it just has a lot of episodes, and that's just ridiculous. There's, if you're worried about fillers, there's different websites you can go to stop you from looking, like, to tell you exactly what's a filler or what isn't. That's easy. People have been doing that for years. Hell, or just look at the fillers in general, because there are a bunch of people out there, fans included, that will tell you there are some fillers that actually happen to be very enjoyable and very much in tune within One Piece itself. So, you take that for what you will. But I just want to put on the record that I am still a fan of One Piece. This show was very hard to look at, knowing what I know about One Piece. And it does not mean that, I would want to see, I don't want to see a live action adaptation, or I'm someone who is disavowed with live action adaptations or anything like that. No, actually, I welcome the idea of a live action adaptation. I just know it could have been done better. There was a lot of issues with this show, and the only thing that I'm truly dissatisfied with is the fact that the fandom itself is not demanding more from people who are associated or had the position or the power to give you everything that you could have asked for from an actual adaptation, not a recreation or a dumbass alterations within the story to fit whatever needs you had for your runtime that you gave yourself, but an actual adaptation where things could have been handled very well and very much in tune with the series itself. They didn't need to cover the entirety of the East Blue arcs. They didn't need to try and panhandle in a bunch of characters without giving them their proper respect. They didn't need to just highlight a bunch of moments without having the context behind those moments actually make those moments that make sense. They just needed to do a proper One Piece adaptation. Hell, they didn't even need to make it a series. They didn't even need to make it follow the actual continuity of the story. They could have picked and chose to do something similar to like anime movies, where this takes place within a certain specific timeline within the series itself, where the characters themselves are about having fun, doing a scenario, and there you go. But they did what they did, and it is incredibly flawed. And despite my best efforts of getting upset as much as I am by it, there are certain elements of it that I generally found myself enjoying. Main thing being the lead actor who plays Luffy. He did a fantastic job. I cannot take that away. He did a fantastic job. Everyone else, there are just some elements in acting that these people just do not have. Him included. Certain things he did where he did, I hate using this word, but he did cringy shit. And seeing it from essentially the emotional impact of certain scenes not being delivered with that emotional impact came off as very and why do you do that? And it just one of those things where it's like, this is kind of one of those issues when people say, translating things from anime to live action just doesn't work. Well, if the delivery is done bad, then yeah, the overall content would showcase that. But I wish they would have done more to essentially prepare those actors for those moments and whatnot, or to get them into the feels of doing those things properly. Sadly enough, on the final episode when he did the whole, the previous episode when he did the whole, because I talked about it on my last video, the whole, of course I will, thing, and it just came off as cringy as hell. Like I said, the actress who played Nami, when she did the hand to her mouth cry, that was actually well done, but it was just one of the things where it's like, so now your acting is bad, but her acting is good? God, this is bad. So, enough of me rambling, but let me get into the review so I can hurry this up, because again, sooner I'm done the better. I got other shit to do. But this was a long time coming, and yeah, so here we go. The beginning of this episode happens to be the stupidest fucking part of this episode, as it shows Nami when she was younger, and it shows her getting the Arlong tattoo. But here's where the dumbathy comes to play. You had in her previous episode, she asked Arlong to join her crew. She asked to join Arlong's crew, and Arlong agreed because she can draw maps, and and he needs maps, and then he could sell her Cocoa Village. Cool. That's something that's not within the anime, but that's fine. The issue comes into play where you have her being chained. That's a problem. See, that's a problem because why the fuck would he put chains on her? She asked to be a part of the crew. He got her into the crew. She's working there on purpose. So what the fuck does she need chains for? Now, I get that essentially... I don't get why you wanted to do this in order to convey that, she was held prisoner under Arlong's rule. You already understand that because she was forcibly doing something she didn't want to do. from a guy who literally murdered her fucking mother. But the chain thing just made it that much stupider. Because after you establish that she wanted to work for him, why would that even be a thing? Like, again, and then why would he take the chain off? What did she do to prompt that, now he can trust her? Well, like, why keep her chained up? That didn't make any sense. You didn't give anything that made that make sense, because you took away the only thing that would have made that make sense, was the fact that Arlong abducted her. See, in the actual original source material, see, this is why shit is like, the source material makes sense, but the shit that you're doing doesn't, because you're a bad writer. In the source material, he took Nami and forced her to join his crew. And essentially with her, it was a good thing because she can then get money. That way she doesn't have to be poor, because the fact that because they were poor, Belmare wound up dead, which is one of the things that leads to Nami's obsession with money and whatnot. But then essentially she brokered the deal with Arlong to where if she gets enough money, she can buy back the village and he'll let them all go free. But you squandered that, like I've been saying, and everything else, in order to show her be chained up. It's really stupid. Really fucking stupid. So, aside from that, we then cut to the Straw Hats essentially going to Cocoa Village after it's been burnt down, torn down, or fucked up because of the fishmen. But the previous scene from the last episode, we saw them witness this in the middle of the night. They arrive at the village when it's damn near fucking noon. What did they do? Take a nap? Did they go to sleep? How the fuck you get from them basically in the middle of just wanting to go fight to just essentially it's a brand new fucking day? And that is just the stupidest. It's so stupid when they did that. Oh boy, was that dumb. It is, man. It just makes you like scratch your head, and it's like, wait a minute. So like, did they walk? I don't understand. God, it's bad. So then after that, you essentially have it to where Nami's sister told the village about everything that Nami was doing, to which then they were willing to go fight and die to get at Arlong, because what's the point? It's not like they could pay him anymore, and the dude just destroyed their village. To which Nami told them no, and they listened. Even though it seemed like the point of them getting ready to go fight anyway was because they literally had nothing to lose. So her doing that kind of made no sense, because it was like, why would they listen? They have no reason to listen. They have nothing to go by to listen, because then you have Luffy say that they're pirates and that they'll take care of it, and then the villagers just kind of let them do that. But that was weird. So then you get an attack on Arlong Park, which was odd because it has a bunch of smoke bombs pop up, or basically like smoke come up from the ground, and it's like, was that supposed to be like something done by Usopp or something like that? They didn't give you any context as if it was or was not. But then also the smoke was just that. It was just smoke. So it didn't do anything. So then it was even odder, because it was like, okay, so what the fuck was the point? I don't know. It's just kind of smoke come up from the ground. It didn't do anything, and then they broke open the door. To which then Nami and Luffy go to where Arlong is supposedly at, and then just have Sanji and Zoro going around fighting, while Usopp basically gets paired off against one fisherman and goes running away. The fight scene that played after was very wiry. It wasn't really interesting or good with the action. It was just very wiry. And I found myself multiple times just kind of questioning Zoro and his abilities, where it's like, you got all these mermen coming at you with swords, and it's like, dude, just take one. You're stabbing them and whatnot, grab their sword so you can fight. Like, you do it with the 3 sword style. So why are you just hindering yourself with the one? God. But they did that. And then you kind of have basically a back and forth between Sanji and Zoro, because they're supposed to be these chatty Cathys. That's also from a fan perspective, not from the perspective of the show. From a fan perspective, they were rushing, trying to build up them two going at each other like cats and dogs. And I get that that's something that they're known for doing. That is a major focus within One Piece, but it just seemed so rushed, because they don't know each other, and they just meet each other, and then they're immediately at each other's throats for no reason. Even after everything is all said and done, they're still going back and forth, and it just kind of is like, all right, you send them into the motions of what it is that they become, rather than what you should be building on. Um, Hell, one of the major aspects that gets that gets Sanji and Zoro to bicker with each other, I believe I said this before, is the issue with Tashigi. Um, and it just being something to where it's like, you just have the multiple moments where Zoro doesn't mind cutting down a woman, while Sanji has that chivalrous aspect to him. So that would be something that would make them see different, don't see eye to eye or whatnot. But that's just something that kind of is brought up that lets that be. But early on, when Sanji first meets Zoro, they kind of don't do anything that really warrants that. So it just felt rushed from a fan perspective. But for the show, it was fine. It was fine. It's okay, I guess, because they really didn't have anything else going on with these characters because they didn't have their individual moments being done. So it was just kind of like whatever. Uh, you then have the Karate Merman essentially do the only scene that I thought was actually cool or no, very well done, where he like jumped into the pool, then immediately jumped out and like tackled Sanji, and then they began to fight. Then you diminish the fight by essentially having to where Zoro and Sanji had to jump this fool in order for them to fight, and to which you then end it with Sanji just removing his coat and then doing his little combo special to defeat the guy. Which begs the question, why the fuck couldn't he do this earlier? What significantly changed that made it to where now Sanji is now strong enough to beat this guy when earlier he couldn't even knock him down when they was at the Barati like a few days ago. I don't know. Maybe it's because, the writing for the show was inconsistent, really fucking stupid. Because in the original source material, Sanji was always capable of fighting this dude. It's just when it got to the point of them fighting, at first they fight underwater, to which he had a clear advantage, and then Sanji was basically trying to save Luffy. But then when they got out of the water, he got comboed in the face and then he defeated him promptly. You also have the issue with Zoro essentially being weakened because of the fact that he's still recovering from his injury with fighting Mihawk. But you also have him overcome fighting Hachi, who had 6 swords after he took Johnny and Yosaku's and then was able to defeat him. But whatever with that, the things that actually would explain a lot of the stuff that's going on is shit that happens in their original source material. So the stuff that they're doing in the series, much like I keep saying, doesn't make any fucking sense outside of actually knowing anything about One Piece. Because then it's like, well, what the fuck, where did this magical power up come from? Because he took off his jacket? Was it weighted or something? I don't know. It's just, he took it off and then he decided to do a combo on a guy and then he won. Whatever. The only thing I say that I will give credit to it actually being something that was okay was Usopp's fight with the Big Lip Merman. If you was to take any concept of like what you could do, and what was done, it was like that was fine. That was for the most part fine. I still would have enjoyed it more if it was more of a scenario of Usopp making up a strategy like he was supposed to, where he had alcohol on him that he threw, and the guy just essentially was like shooting water or something. It's just like he could just do that. It didn't have to be that he had to drink something first to do it. He just was shooting water, or that they were running past a lake or something like that, and he quickly got a handful of water put in his mouth and was shooting out bullets. Anything of that would have been done, because again, it took away from the creativity as well as like the strategies Usopp make up, where he throws the alcohol on him, then he sets him on fire with the alcohol, and then essentially, even though he'd be burning, he runs up and hits him with the hammer. But they kind of just had the alcohol, he hit that and exploded, and then that was the end of the merman. And that just kind of felt wiggy. But that's from a fan perspective. But other than that, that was the only really fight that was handled properly. So, yeah, I guess. So then we get to essentially Nami and Luffy being inside the Arlong Park, which was very confusing because it seemed as if that was the bottom floor of Arlong Park, but then later when Luffy defeats Arlong, he pushes him through the levels of Arlong Park, which is something that happens within the series, within the original source material. But again, they're like in the fucking basement. So then it was like, what other floor is beneath this? Because everything is like concrete, stone. So very confusing. Very, very, very confusing. But you then have Luffy and Arlong fight. And then when Luffy and Arlong fight, again, much like with the Barati, it's one of those situations of like, yeah, what are you really doing? Now, earlier they had a dialogue choice of essentially Luffy understanding that Arlong is tough and he might not be able to beat him. but then Zoro saying everyone has a weakness, like every monster has a weakness, kind of signifying that they can figure out some way of beating Arlong, which again, really fucking dumb because nothing of the sort happens. Nothing comes to pass where Luffy is like, ooh, this is a better understanding for me to do in order rather than just fighting you or beating you. To which then he promptly beats him in a fight by just fighting him and beating him. Even though he then kind of opts out of that by stating, I might not be able to defeat you, but I can destroy what you built. And then he defeats Arlong, which it just, it's like you're saying one thing, but then you're doing the other because you have to have him beat Arlong because that's what is supposed to happen. That's what's in the original source material. That's what's supposed to happen. That's what's gonna happen. But then you are so stuck within your dumbass writing ways that you need to validate how Luffy could beat him, or the fact that Luffy shouldn't be able to beat him because mermen are just so superior. Also, you get Arlong screaming that over and over and over again throughout the series because they're so heavy-handed on trying to convey that Arlong has been mistreated or enslaved, or that mer people have been enslaved. But again, it kind of doesn't do anything because then it's like, all right, you do this, but then you enslave a little girl. Like, See, rather than have it to where his hatred for human comes from something, but you just don't really get an understanding of what, and then it builds on later within the source material, like what they do when it comes to Arlong. He hates humans, but he still does what he does to survive, and he's fine with that, but he still don't like humans and whatnot. And then later on, much later, when you find out why, it's like, damn, okay, I kind of see where he comes from, but this motherfucker still did what he did to Nami, so go fuck yourself. This is like all you have him do is just kind of just constantly scream at the audience. We were slaves. We're slaved. And I'm doing what humans do because I was a slave. I was a slave, a slave, a slave. And it's like, get it. Racism. It's so in your face and heavy-handed rather than the subtlety and the beauty that is actually done within One Piece when it comes to tackling racism. This was just outrageous. Just so dumb. But so then you have Arlong and Luffy fight, and it's whatever. Honestly, it's just kind of lame. Again, much like with the other CGI things that they've done with Luffy, where it's like you should have sped up a lot of the stuff because you're missing out on your action because you want him to highlight that he's doing an attack, but you have to do the attack and you're setting it up to where it's like, wait a minute, CGI part, and so everything needs to slow down to a crawl to kind of show it. It's not bad CGI, it's just the fact that it's like, yeah, they're moving, like they're fighting, so it's fast, so it's not like they're supposed to stand still and wait for a hit to come. It's not a goddamn turn-based RPG or anything like that. It's just a fight. So showcase and like have those moments in that to where it's just fluent, like it's just fluent. It flows. It's good and an enjoyable watch. Instead, I'm more so just like, all right, he just did Gum Gum Pistol. Wait for the recoil, and it's like, yeah, and the recoil is taking a while, and then he's gonna stand there and wait for his turn. Now Arlong gets to attack, and that's the entirety of the fight, and it just was incredibly boring. So then you have him decide that he's going to destroy everything, so he promptly decides to break Arlong Park, in which the building starts coming down, and then he does Gum Gum Axe on top of Arlong. And here's a funny tidbit. In the original series, when Arlong basically attacks Luffy with, I'm a 4Kids fan, Shark and Awe, he attacks him on his side, to which Luffy brings down Gum Gum Axe, and then Arlong is in front of him, and then he's like stomping him into the ground. I've always loved that, because it's incredibly inconsistent. But with this, I actually enjoyed the fact that they kind of corrected that, as Arlong attacked him from the front, and then he brought down his axe to hit him, and then send him down through Arlong Park, destroying it. I actually like that they did that, because, yeah, the other way was really inconsistent. But whatever. But essentially afterwards, you get him being like, nah, man, you're free and everything. They did a moment that I actually thought was well within character and kind of was the only part of the entirety, aside from the dude being in the water, that fit. And it was when Sanji called out to Nami with his arms open up, and then she promptly ran to Usopp and Zoro and hugged them. And I was like, yep, that's what she would do, because she don't know you, dude. And then I was like, yeah, that put a smile on my face. But then afterwards, you had Cocoa Village essentially celebrating the fact that all their homes are fucking burnt down and they really ain't got nothing. And then Sanji was like cooking up food for everybody or whatever. And then him and Zoro had another catty moment and whatnot. Usopp was telling lies, then Luffy was cheering him on because of it. So it was like, yay, nice little, yeah, yeah, yeah. Then Garp shows up, with Kobe. Now earlier you had a thing with the Marines, and again I didn't mention it because it didn't need to be mentioned because that's what every scene with Kobe was. It was just this unnecessary spiel of stupid that did absolutely nothing to the overall series. Seriously, think back to every fucking moment that had Kobe in it for this entirety of the series. Did any of those scenes hold any importance whatsoever? Did anything happen that made sense? Any of it. They didn't need to run into Garp in order for them to get to the Barada. You could have just had it to where Luffy smelled food and then they traveled to the Barada. That didn't matter. They didn't need any of that. But because of their force involvement of Kobe within the series, just use as literally a transition dump because they couldn't figure out what to do with a scene when they were done with it because the story is supposed to continuously flow because it's involved with these characters who are all in one fucking spot. Because they couldn't know what to do with that, they kept cutting and going to Kobe whenever they needed to transition or move to something. And because of that, think back to all those scenes. Did any of them ever matter? Did they ever matter? Did they do anything to even develop the character of Kobe? Because in the long haul, nothing happened. He's still being trained as a Marine. He was always going to be trained as a Marine. He was going to be trained specifically under Garp. He's in Garp's unit, so that kind of goes without saying that he would be trained under him. So having that as a big reveal at the end of the season didn't make any fucking sense. So what exactly did you do by having that? You did nothing to use or utilize having Kobe involved in this series at all. Nothing was done. Well, Garp wouldn't have got the information. Garp shouldn't be there. And then even to have your series end with Garp and Luffy essentially fighting to where he just gives up and leaves at the end proves ultimately how unnecessary that shit was. And it was just so fucking stupid because of the fact that you literally had nothing to do. You had nothing to do with this character, with this moment, or with this concept, other than the fact that you didn't know what, like, I don't know how to transition correctly. I don't know how to write that time passed or that we're cut to a couple hours later or something. You could have did any of that, but instead it's like, let's focus on Kobe. Nigga. If you would have got rid of Buggy, which again was another character like that I didn't mention because he was completely unfucking necessary. If you would have gotten rid of Buggy and had him off doing his own little thing, you literally could have used both of them as wonderful epilogues that focused and highlighted the shit that actually took place in One Piece, where it's Kobe and Helmeppo's training off to the side of the Navy base somewhere, and you just get small little glimpses of that. Or Buggy getting his body back and as well as reuniting with his crew off to the side somewhere leading up to when they get to Locktown or when he meets Alvida. Any of that could have been done and it would have actually made sense and relegated well within One Piece because that's some shit that actually coincides when later on they meet these people and then you kind of don't need to wonder where the fuck have they been. You already got that information. That's why they did it within the source material. But instead of that, you just kind of rambled on nonsense in order to just puff up this already bloated mess of a story because you're just really that bad at writing. So, fuck it. So you had Garp and Luffy fight and it just ultimately amounted to nothing. And then he just wound up letting them know that basically he wanted to make sure that he was ready to go to the Grand Line. And that Luffy just basically again asserted the fact he's going to be king of the pirates, which again was an unnecessary thing for us to see or to hear as an audience member. But this was to have Garp basically see Gold Roger within Luffy. And again, not necessary because it's not like Luffy is the embodiment of Gold Roger. Luffy just wants to become king of the pirates. He's not doing the exact same shit that Gold Roger did. Gold Roger never had the gum fruit. So we don't need that type of symbolism behind the characters. What would have been fine, what would have been fucking perfect is the thing that actually happened in the source material when Luffy goes to a bar that Gold Roger went to back in Logtown before he entered in the Grand Line, and where the guy who ran the bar remembers seeing Gold Roger sitting in that seat, and Luffy sits in the exact same seat with the same goofy smile. They could have did that and you just have the little overlay of Luffy sitting at the bar, and he's sitting in his little way, and then the guy just imagines Gold Roger sitting there the way how he sat down, and he just gets that same feeling that that kid reminds me of Gold Roger. That would have been nice. You could have did that, but whatever. So then you have Garp leave, and essentially, I guess as a farewell present, Kobe punk ass comes the next day, mind you, to deliver Luffy's wanted poster. Completely unfucking necessary. They get the news from these birds, and Nami knows about these birds, and she actually contacts them frequently. And you could have had it to where someone in the village got it, and like, you know, it could have been the sister, could have been the guy with the pinwheel on his head. It's supposed to have a fucking pinwheel on his head, but you know, they fucked that up too. Because you just make orange peels in the pinwheels and it means the exact same thing. When that's not what it, I mean, the tangerines and peels into pinwheels, so it can mean that, because that's not what it means. In fact, that seems really dumb. Also, how do they move? Like, just, really, fuck. It's just a fuck. But you had it to where Kobe gave Luffy the wanted poster. And then he was like, you, and then Luffy was like, you be a great Marine, and you be a great pirate. And it's like, what is this? This is so gay. This is so unbelievably stupid gay. It did nothing. You do not need Luffy to again reaffirm his position on being king of the pirates. In fact, it's a main staple of One Piece for him to be deterred from trying to be king of the pirates. So having him reaffirm it is unnecessary. I think I'm kind of bitching again about the whole Garp situation, but still. But having Kobe walk up to deliver, and he's like, I'm not here as a Marine, I'm here as your friend. It's like, oh, shut up. Oh, this is stupid. Why are you here? Why are y'all still here? Why would you still be here? Shouldn't you have shipped out already? You guys came in the middle of the night, you picked up all the all-along parts. Why would you stay until the next morning? What significance would that hold? Why would Garp then let you go on your own to do this shit? This is so dumb. It's almost as if the people who wrote this have absolutely no understanding of the concept of time. So, you know, go fuck yourself. So then Luffy is happy that he gets his bounty. Again, another moment where the actor kind of embodied Luffy in general. Because I felt happy for him. I was like, yo, he's handling this really cool. And it was dope how they did that. And then essentially they showcased the Straw Hat symbol on the mast. Boy, this is going to be hard to talk about. Okay, they showcased the symbol on the mast, which was always supposed to have been there. But it was like, ooh, highlighted moment is that, yeah, they painted that and they put it on the ship. Woo! Like, it's the iconic One Piece flag. Yay! And it's like, okay, sure. I was just kind of done with it by then. But then you had it to where it, ugh. Like, it's just ugh. But then you had it to where a bunch of other people saw the wanted poster, and then they decided to set sail to the Grand Line. They did the iconic moment where everyone puts their foot up on a barrel, and then they announce what their dream is before they leave to the Grand Line, and then they subsequently smash the barrel. But the show, because it's bad at the context and what the meanings behind shit is, they don't smash the barrel. So, you know, fuck you. And then they go to an end credit scene to where they show Smoker burning Luffy's wanted poster, which doesn't make sense because he has no animosity towards Luffy, and realistically, he basically would just have a new wanted poster just like he would any old pirate that pops up. So there is nothing special about that. But yeah, can't wait for the next season. This series was bad. It was bad. It's inconsistent. It's very dumb. And there's so many elements in it that are just unbelievably just retarded that the only way that I can explain someone not paying attention to it is the fact that they blissfully are ignorant towards just natural storytelling or, you know, character progression or whatnot. Then you also got a bunch of people out there who are just adamantly trying to make the show seem a net positive so they can down or diss any other, like, you know, bad anime adaptation or whatnot. First of all, this isn't the first good anime adaptation live action adaptation, and as well as this is for damn sure not like a second or something like that. They've been doing good ones for years now. It's just you don't know about them. This is the first one Netflix that has done that people think are good. But again, this is actually a very poor adaptation. As far as I'm concerned, it's still in the same realm as Dragon Ball Evolution. It's a piece of shit. But you have way too many people out there who are basically just adamantly passing on all of the multiple mistakes this show has made just so they can sing its praises. And, chalk that up to basically being One Piece fans, chalk that up for not knowing anything about One Piece, or just people adamantly just wanting, Netflix to get a win. So there you go with that. Never already spoke my piece on exactly what they're going to do with the prior, but for the most part, I'm done with this shit. I'm glad that I said I was going to watch all the episodes. I watched all the episodes and I promptly gave my reviews for it. So, there you go with that. But for the most part, this shit is not to be praised. It's not to be emulated. It's not to be worshipped. And for the love of God, I can assure you that if they do a second season, they're going to butcher things so much worse than what it is that we've gotten already. And I do not want that, Sam. I do not want that at all. Yeah. Hopefully this doesn't, this is a slippery slope, because the fact that people give shit like this a passing means that we're ever so much closer to someone attempting to try and do a live action Dragon Ball Z. And Lord knows that will be the day when all of the stars align and we are basically hit with the curse. Will be the day that someone attempts to do that. And if it's Netflix trying to do it because they think that they can handle it with this fucking showrunner, I might have to set some shit on fire. So with that, I thank anyone and everyone who stayed this long to listen. I'll still be doing my own thing, but for the most part, I'm just kind of, I am depressed. Well, not that much, because I just bought Across the Spider-Verse, so I got the Steelbook, and I'm about to watch it, and I'm enjoying it. Beautiful Blu-ray. So there's a happy ending to my story. I get to enjoy content that's actually worthwhile, and I no longer have to look at this piece of shit that is Netflix's Pirates. This has been another episode of Fun with Flame. I've been your host, Danieltheflame, and as always, good people, I hope you had fun.